The first verse is from Paul's epistle to the Romans in chapter 12, verse 2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." And the second one is in Philippians chapter 4, in verse 8. "Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So, the previous sermon had a suggestion. It said, look, everything we do matters. Everything we do matters. Everything we do has an effect on the world around us. It has an effect on the people around us. It becomes a part of what this world is. Even if only locally, it still changes the people around you and the community around you. And therefore, we, Christians of all people, should be doing things that change the world around us. Because just offhand, it isn't hard to notice that the world's pretty screwed up. And there's no way that we should retreat and say, that's the way it is. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. Our church is a safe refuge from this world. It's a place where we can raise our children and they'll never even notice how bad things are because we've protected them. That's not what the church should be. Maybe the church should be like an army, but like an army out in the field, out at risk, ready to attack the things that are wrong. Now, the world is so screwed up that there's no way any one of us can fix all of it. There's no way, in fact, that any one church of us can fix all of it. But we don't have to. First of all, the victory that fixes it was won on the cross by Jesus Christ. This is a cleanup operation we're doing here and now. This is a catching up with the details and fixing all the other stuff, even though the big battle's been won and the war is assured. But there is a lot to do to clean up after it. So I suggested in that sermon that what we should do is that every one of us should pick at least one major issue, one major thing that's wrong with the world, one thing that belongs to us, and put as much time and effort into it as we would put into a hobby. I mean, all of us have to earn a living and take care of our families. All of us have to do the stuff that has to get done to take care of ourselves and those immediately around us. And very few of us are called to abandon everything, like Francis of Assisi, like some of the people who go out in the mission field. Very few of us are called to do that, to abandon everything, to not even take care of ourselves, and to go and give ourselves totally and entirely to the mission we're called to. But all of us are called to give the mission that God gives us at least as much time as we would give to a hobby. As much time as we would give to playing golf if we were golfers, or to flying a sailplane if we were flyers, or to hiking if we were hikers, or to playing tennis if we were tennis players, or to playing video games if we were video game players. All of us should choose something to work on, of all the things that need to be worked on, and give it as much attention and as much time and as much effort as if it were one of our hobbies. And that'll still leave enough time left over for work, for family, even for entertainment and enjoyment. The sum of all the people in all the churches everywhere giving just as much time as they would give to a hobby to the mission of the church in one form or another, each of them doing whichever piece calls to them, is actually going to be more powerful than thousands of people who are called like missionaries to give their whole entire lives to it. Because there are millions and millions and millions of us. Probably 1.5 to 2 billion Christians throughout the world, or at least that many people who call themselves Christians. That's a powerful amount of work. And we ought all of us to be doing that. We don't have to do everything. We don't have to be afraid of all the things that we can't do. If we're called to work on solving the problem of hunger, it's all right to say somebody else has to deal with racism. There'll be enough people working on racism to at least beat that back and hold it down. I'm working on hunger, and I really am giving it enough time and effort that I can be excused for not working on everything. But in order to do that, you do have to work on something. And that's what these verses are for this morning. They're for choosing something, for choosing your path, for picking out what you're going to do. And there are two rules for that. One is, don't let your mind be conformed to this world. Conformed. Do we even know what that word means here? Don't let your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, and your life be made just like everyone else's. Don't let them be made like the world makes things. Don't let advertising turn you into a consumer. Don't let television turn you into a couch potato. I don't know. Don't let it turn you into an idiot running around lying to his friends in order to create comic situations. Have you noticed on situation comedies how much of the plot exists because friends and family lie to one another? Probably more than in real life. They do that in order to have a plot device. Whatever it is out there, don't be made like everybody else by the world. Instead, be transformed by what we read here, by what we do here together, by what Jesus Christ has done for us. And when we let ourselves be transformed, we've got our own mind, our own thoughts, and our own feelings that have been changed by the work of the Holy Spirit in us, so that they are capable of making a good choice of what we should be doing, of what we should be working on, of what we should be helping with. You can trust yourself if you've let yourself be changed by the gospel. You are yourself in your own person, in your own thoughts, in your own feelings, in your own desires and intentions, an instrument that God has created for finding out what the good thing is that you should be doing. You don't have to always be going against your own desires in order to do God's will. And the other thing about choosing is what we read in Philippians. Look for what's good. Look for what's right. Look for what's just. They don't have to be Christian things. If it's good because God made it good, even if it's not a Christian movement or a Christian organization. If it's justice, then it's just because God created justice itself, even if it's not a Christian organization. If it's loving and kind, if it takes care of others, it's God's will, even if it's not a Christian organization. Mind you, there are lots of things that Christian organizations do that might become your hobby too. There's translating the Bible into languages that have never even been written down. There's an organization called Wycliffe Bible Translators that does that. They've created a written language for almost 1,000 languages now in the last 100 years that had never been written down anywhere before. And in doing that, they've actually preserved those languages from disappearing, but also made it possible to translate the Bible into people's native languages. Maybe you want to support that or work on that. There are all kinds of Christian things to do too. But I want us to think about addressing the bigger things, because we all too often think about church things. We think, hey, church is my hobby. I go to church, I go to our social affairs, I go to our potlucks, I go to our mission trips. Church is my hobby. No, church is your life. You still need a hobby of doing good, of doing what God calls the church to do. So we follow the advice Paul gives in Philippians. We look for what's right, for what's good, for what's honest, for what's pure, and we try to do those things. So that was what was in the sermon before. I riffed on it a little bit here. But I want us these last few Sundays of the summer to have our worship be a little bit like having a small group together. We'll split into 2 groups in a minute. Because I want us to figure out how to work on these things even now. So on Thursday, I went and I picked up my granddaughter, Caitlin, to come visit us. And while I was there, I sat down with my grandson, Gabriel, who's got his learner's permit now and is just now learning to drive. And he's having trouble getting started because when he gets in the car, it's overwhelming. There's so many things to do. You have to watch for everything that's moving. You got to look for all the streets. You got to figure out how to watch your mirrors, how to steer, especially how to steer. That's kind of funny because when you turn, well, wait a minute, you got to, and it's hard for him because he has to do everything all at once. And I said, Gabriel, I said, do you know how to do everything all at once? No, I don't. I said, I can teach you how to do everything all at once. It's really very simple. Here's how you do everything all at once. You do one thing at a time. You do one thing at a time. You pick one thing and you practice it and you work at it until it gets to be where it's almost automatic. And then when it's almost automatic, you start doing the second thing. And you work on the second thing. And when you get to the point where the second thing is almost automatic and the first thing is fully automatic, now you can go to the third thing. And by doing one thing at a time, you'll get to the place where you can do everything all at once. And he said, whoa. He said, I can do that. That might work. And I said, didn't anyone ever tell you that? He said, no. I said, didn't your parents ever tell you that? He said, no. Didn't your teachers ever tell you that? Isn't this one of the most basic lessons about how to operate your brain? Didn't anyone ever tell you that? He said, no, no one ever told me that. That worries me. That some of the simple, obvious lessons about how to operate our brain, how to operate our feelings and our thoughts, how to operate our lives in order to do what God calls us to do, we haven't even been told. Sometimes I think that instead of preaching, I should be just teaching or coaching us, showing us simple ways to build up a pattern of behavior so that we can do what we want to do. So with that in mind, this morning I've got 2 of those kinds of lessons to give us for how to have little small group meetings where what I want us to do is I want us to talk about what you're going to choose as a mission, as a task, as a hobby, as a thing to do with part of your life in the next 40 years to try to make the world better. And the first thing comes on is, wait a minute, how can you choose something when you don't know what to choose? Some of us are so young that we're obviously not going to choose right now. Right, she frowns at me when I say that. He smiles at me and smirks. Some of us are too young to choose what it is we're going to do right now. How do you choose something when you don't know what to choose? And the answer is, you try it on for size. You try it on for size, just like you go shopping for clothes. You pick something even if you don't know whether it's what you really want to do or not, and just for a moment, for a day, for a week, for a thought, for an exercise, you try it on for size. You say, okay, let's pretend that this is what I want to do. If it is, what would I do with it? That's all. That's how you choose when you don't know what to choose at all. You try things on for size. So, if we sit here now, and I've got a list of things you can choose to try on for size. If you can't think of something of your own, give me the list, right? Fighting climate change, countering racism, feeding the hungry, rescuing the captives, healing the sick, healing the body politic. That is our society and its politics. Healing them, I think of polarization right now. Ending war, fighting poverty, countering overpopulation. Those are the general things that when we work on them, we can work on with other people. There are church things that you can work on too. Helping translate the gospel for people who don't know it in their native languages. Helping the church find new places to work. Helping build hospitals in other countries. The church does a lot of that. But I didn't want to put the church things up because I was just looking to suggest things that we might not think of as being our church mission. But if you've got one, if you know what yours is, don't have to use one of these. But if you don't have one in mind this morning, pick one of these, just for this morning, to try it out for size. So now the next problem arises, okay, I've picked it, I'm going to try it out for size. How do I try it out for size? How do I do something that I can't do yet? How do I do something that I can't do yet? And the answer to that is, imagine that you're already doing it. Pretend that you're already doing it. Say, hey, suppose I've already decided that I'm working to end hunger. In fact, I've already been doing it for a couple of years. I already know something about it. But now I have to sit here and I've got other people around me. I have to talk about what I'm going to do next. That's all right. If I was in the middle of it, I would be just as stuck to say, hey, I've been working on this for a couple of years. Now I got to think of something new to do with it. This is the time to sit down with other people and think of something new to do with it. At some point, and you get this in business, right? At some point, even though you've been doing something all along, you have meetings where you stop and say, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to think of that we haven't done at all yet? In every big project, there are places where you stop and you have to think of new stuff for it. And that's what we're going to do this morning. Choose something to try it out for size, or something that you've already got in your mind, or even something you're already working on, and pretend you're in the middle of it already. And you've already been doing it, but now's the time to think about what you're going to do next with it. The way to do something that you can't do yet is to imagine that you're already doing it. Simple things. The way to do everything all at once is to do one thing at a time. The way to choose something that when you don't know when to choose is to try something out for size. And the way to do something that you can't do yet is to pretend you're already doing it. So we're going to break up into small groups. What do we got here? 3 and 5 is 8. I'm not going to count her. 11, 14, 17, 18, 19. 2 groups of 10 is